Hello students, my name is Samapti Sinha Mahapatra and I am your zoology teacher teaching in Sri Chaitanya Institute. Students, we were talking about the chapters of human physiology and we have already covered till excretion. Today we are going to start with a fresh chapter which is locomotion and movement. First of all, let us see what is the probable number of questions that we are expecting in NEET 2020. So we are expecting one or two questions, definitely one question is for sure every year that comes in NEET. So one or two questions we expect this year as well from this chapter. Now talking about this chapter, pay attention because lot of things we have discussed, because we are going to discuss about two things in this chapter. One part is your muscles and other part is your bone, okay? And in the muscle part, most of the things I am sure must have been covered in the animal tissues part, okay? Like the differences between the muscles, the contraction part. Although quickly we are also going to revise that portion as well, okay? Now talking about the very first thing is the definition of locomotion and the definition of movement. Now when we say locomotion and when we say movement, what is the difference? Like suppose I am standing here and I am moving my hands. So if I am moving my hands, I am moving my head, but there is no change in the position. If I simply change the posture, that's called as the movement. So this is merely change in posture. But if any change in posture leads to change in position, like that I moved from this place to this place, so there is a change in position. Whenever there is a change in position, that change in position is called as locomotion. So you can easily say that a very famous line, all locomotions are movement or all movement are locomotion. All locomotion is movement, but all movement is not locomotion, okay? Because only those movement which can change the position will be known as locomotion. So that's the definition of what is locomotion and what is movement. Now talking about the different types of movement, beta, usually you see different animals have got different structures for their movement. Like we talk about lower animals like that of Hydra. Hydra can use its tentacles, okay? Hydra has tentacles. Hydra belonging to Coelenterata can use the tentacles, show some movement, can also locomote with the help of that jumping movement, okay? In the same way, if I talk about humans, humans also may show various types of movement. Let's see what are the different types of movement that is seen in the humans. Now talking about the very first type of movement is amoeboid movement. As the name itself is saying amoeboid, and amoeba means changing the shape. So there are certain cells in your body as well which can change the shape and thus show some movement. And those cells like macrophages, like that of white blood cells which I have written as leukocytes, can change its shape and can show some movement. That's called as amoeboid movement. Talking about flagellar movement, where is the flagellar movement seen? Can you, do you remember any? Cilia, you know very well that in your fallopian tube, ventricles of brain, you have got cilia. Flagellar movement is only seen in case of the sperm, okay? Although in our body we don't see any flagellar movement, we only see ciliary movement. I have not mentioned it, there is another type of movement with the help of cilia. That ciliary movement, very well we know that ciliary movement occurs in the fallopian tube, it might occur in the ventricles of the brain, because we have already studied the ciliary movement in the tissue part, okay? But flagellar movement is only seen in one place, that is in the sperms, in the spermatozoa, okay? Now talking about the muscular movement, actually most of the movement in our body is because of the muscles. And talking about the muscles then, 40 to 50% of the body weight, the weight of the body is because of the muscles. So on the other side of the board I have written that muscles makes up 40 to 50% of your body weight. Talking about the muscles, we have got 639 muscles in total. We have got 639 muscles in total. Talking about the properties of muscles, muscles are excitable, they are contractile, they are elastic, they are extensible. So these are some of the property. When I say that the muscles are excitable, that means definitely you know that there is a junction formed For the contraction of muscles, they need some information, right? So whenever there is a neuron that forms a junction with the muscles get stimulated, right? So they are excitable, and then they may show the property of contraction. They are definitely elastic because they, when stretched, come back to their original position, and since they can be stretched, they are also extensible. Got my point? Elastic means to contract and come back. And definitely they are contractile, definitely they are excitable, definitely they are extensible. So you have to remember all the points, because they might ask you like, are the muscles excitable, are the muscles extensible, and like that. Now students, before I start with this part, structure of the skeletal muscles, I would want to tell you a part which I hope that you already know, and that's the differences between the different types of muscles. You know that in our body we have got smooth muscles, we have got skeletal muscles, and we have got cardiac muscles. So quickly just make sure that you recall everything whatever I am saying. When you talk about the skeletal muscles, they are voluntary in nature. When you talk about smooth muscles, they are involuntary in nature. When you talk about cardiac muscles, which is your heart muscles, they are also involuntary in nature. Talking about skeletal muscles, the muscle fibers are cylindrical. Talking about the smooth muscles, they are fusiform. Talking about the cardiac muscles, they are also cylindrical. Now talking about the branching and talking about the nucleus, when you talk about the skeletal muscles, they are unbranched. When you talk about smooth muscles, they are also unbranched. When you talk about the cardiac muscles, they are branched. Now talking about the nucleus, the position of the nucleus in the peripheral position in skeletal muscles, in the center for smooth muscles, and in the center for cardiac muscles. Talking about a very important point which is regarding the cardiac muscles, which is the presence of the intercalated disc, which is the gap junctions, and these gap junctions, which are a type of cell junctions, are only and only present in your cardiac muscles, but they are absent in smooth muscles, they are absent in the skeletal muscles as well. Now your skeletal muscles, they contract very fast, so since their contraction is very fast, they also get fatigued very easily. Talking about the smooth muscles, they contract slowly, so they fatigue slowly. But talking about the cardiac muscles, they contract rapidly, but they will never get fatigued. Only once they get fatigued when the person is dying, okay? So they will never get fatigued even after contracting faster. Talking about the blood supply, your skeletal muscles has got rich blood supply. Your smooth muscles have got less blood supply, but your cardiac muscles have got abundant blood supply. So these are some of the differences and similarities between the different types of muscles. Also students, you know that your skeletal muscles are appearing striated, right? They have got dark and light bands, and that dark and light bands are quite important regarding this chapter because that's a major portion of the chapter. Now talking about your cardiac muscles, they have also got striations, but their striations is faint. And smooth muscles, they are smooth because they have not got any kind of striations. That is a comparison between these three types of muscles. I know I was a little faster, but I hope that you people have already covered this part in the animal tissues. Now talking majorly about this chapter is the diagram. I have made the diagram of these skeletal muscles. Now see, suppose this exact diagram students is given in NCERT. So this diagram becomes quite important. So pay attention to this transverse section through a muscle. We know that around the muscles we have got connective tissue. Talking about the entire muscles, beta, this is the whole muscle. This entire big thing is the whole muscle. And around the muscle, around the whole muscle, you have got a connective tissue. That connective tissue, this connective tissue around the whole muscle, you must be familiar with this, is called as epimysium. Epimysium. This is the connective tissue around the whole muscle. Remember that I am not writing it. You can write it or you can revise it from your notes. Now entire the whole muscles, do you see these small bundles? These small bundles are called as the muscle bundle, or they are called as fascicle. So fascicles are nothing but these are the muscle bundle. Okay, these are the muscle bundle. Just like around the whole muscle you have got a connective tissue, that connective tissue is epimysium. In the same way you have got the muscle bundles, and around the muscle bundle the connective tissue that you see is called as perimysium, beta. That is called as perimysium. You have to remember that epimysium around whole muscles, perimysium around muscle bundle. But in your NCERT, it is given that in between these muscle bundle, In between these muscle bundle, not around, in between what you see some collagenous substance, this. In between you see some collagenous substance. This collagenous substance is called as fascia. Beta, remember that fascia is a collagenous substance between the fascicles. Now inside the fascicle, do you see this purple color thing? This purple color thing is muscle fiber. Now this muscle fiber is very, very important because these are the anatomical structures of your muscles. And looking at the muscle fibers itself, we differentiate among all the different types of muscles, because we said that in skeletal muscles the muscle fibers are cylindrical, in smooth muscles the muscle fibers are fusiform, and cylindrical in case of cardiac muscles. So we need to understand these muscle fibers. Now talking about beta the muscle fiber, you already know that what is the plasma membrane of the muscle fiber. What is the plasma membrane of the muscle fiber called? The plasma membrane is sarcolemma. So immediately outside the muscle fiber, the plasma membrane that you will see is sarcolemma, and the fluid that is present inside is sarcoplasm. Talking about the muscle fibers connective tissue outside, that connective tissue is called as endomysium. Did you get my point? What is the difference between endomysium and the sarcolemma? Outside connective tissue is endomysium, and then in inner one you have the sarcolemma, and that's the plasma membrane of your muscle fiber. Inside the muscle fiber, do you see some this yellow color dotted structure? These dotted structures are called as the myofibrils or the myofilaments, and these myofibrils or myofilaments has those actin and myosin, and that's very, very important because the actin filament or the myosin filament structure is given in your NCERT that we are going to discuss. Before that, let me just again conclude this diagram for you. We have got the whole muscle, we have got epimysium, we have got muscle bundles which are called as fascicles. Around the fascicles, the connective tissue that you have is called as perimysium. The fascicles in between you have collagenous substance which is called as fascia. In the muscle bundle you have got muscle fiber whose plasma membrane is sarcolemma, whose connective tissue outside is called as endomysium. Inside that muscle fiber you have got some dotted structure which are called as myofibrils or myofilaments having actin and myosin. The myofibrils that we just now saw, it has got actin and myosin arranged. We are actually going to see how is the arrangement of the thin filaments which are majorly composed of the actin and the thick filaments which are majorly composed of myosin looks like. We are going to discuss the portion of the muscles which is called as the part of the muscles which is the functional unit of muscles, that is sarcomere. So we are going to discuss the structure of the sarcomere. I am sure that you are familiar with this structure already. Let us discuss the structure of the sarcomere. Now what is the sarcomere actually? When we say sarcomere, sarcomere is the distance between two successive Z lines. Can you see this white one is the Z line? This is the state, the above diagram is a state when the muscle is not contracted, and this is the state when your muscle is contracted. Okay, now pay attention. This is the two successive Z lines, and the entire distance, entire structure between the two successive Z line is called as sarcomere. Now we want to see what is the arrangement of the thin filaments, what is the arrangement of the thick filaments. Now do you see this yellow color thing? This is actually the thick filament. This is the thick filament. Do you see the position of the thick filament is exactly at the center of the sarcomere. Talking about the thin filament, which is this white one, this thin filament is located laterally. Now we are going to see that there are some regions called as A band, there are some regions called as S zone, O zone or I band. Now what are these regions? Students, actually we are seeing in the 2D diagram, but the arrangement of the filament is in a 3D form. So try to understand. Now when we say the arrangement of the A band, arrangement of the filaments, which is going to give you the idea about different types of bands. First of all, let's talk about this thin filament. Do you see this white filament? Through this white filament, which we are calling as thin filament, through its center only Z line is passing. Am I right? Through the center of this not the I band, through the center of this thin filament, this Z line is passing. Also I have written Z line, or which is also called as cross membrane. Z line, also called as cross membrane, passes through the center of eye. Okay, passes through the center of eye I have written. Now why I have written eye, I am going to tell you. For now you remember it passes through the center of this thin filament. But students, you have got thin filament here, you have got thin filament here, then you have got thick filament. Now please pay attention. Do you see any region here which only shows the thick filament? Which only shows the thick filament. Do you see this area? This area will only show this thick filament. The area which only shows the thick filament, this portion is called as H zone or Hansen's zone. I have written H zone or Hansen zones, where you see only and only thick filament. Okay, and through the center of this H zone, a line passes, imaginary line passes. That line is M line. Okay, so this is the area where you see only the thick filament, and through the center of this thick filament, which is the H zone, the M line is passing. But you will also see in this sarcomere that there is some part where you see this overlapping of the thin and thick filament. So this is the thin filament, this is the thick filament, and there is a overlapping. This overlapping zone is called as O zone. In a lot of books, O zone is not mentioned. Okay, not a problem. You remember that the thin and thick is overlapping in this area, which is called as O zone. The thin and thick is overlapping in this area, which is called as O zone. Got it? Now combining all the three, the O plus H plus O, the O plus H plus O, that makes the entire A band. Got it? Also beta, can you see that actually A band is the entire thick filament. A band is actually the entire thick filament. Okay. Now there is also some portion where you will only see the thin part, where you will only see the thin filament. Okay. So this thin filament, where you see only thin filament, this area is called as I band. This area is called as I band. Okay. And that is the reason beta I said that we can say that Z line passes through the center of I band also. Why? Because just like you have got an I band here, in the same way you will get I band here also, right? But since this is a part of a single filament only, you say half of I is present on this side, half of I is present on this side. That's the reason through the center of I band, the line which passes is called as Z line. Okay, so I have written over here about the I band and A band. Did you understand the structures? Area where only thick filament, that is H zone, through which M line is passing. The thin and thick overlapping on either side is called as O band. O plus H plus O forms the entire A band. The portion where you only see the thin filament is called as I band. Through the center of I band, the line which passes is Z line. Now what you are doing, you are contracting the muscles. We are going to also see how the muscles are contracting. But once you are contracting the muscles, beta, what is happening is the thin filaments pulling towards the center. Okay, what is happening is that, imagine my blue chalk to be your thin filament. What is happening, initially it is like this. When your muscles are contracting, this is moving, sliding inside. This is sliding inside. We are going to see the sliding filament theory. But beta, once your thin filaments on either side is going to move inside, you know that your thin filament is connected on the sides with the help of Z line. So once your thin filaments are passing over each other, what is moving over each other, what is coming closer is your Z line. When your thin filaments are moving inside, what is coming closer is your Z line. That's the reason I have made these Z lines much closer, where you also can see that the entire length of the sarcomere is shortened. Obviously during the muscle contraction, sarcomere shortens. Okay. Also talking about the other bands, A band, which is called as anisotropic band, and I band, which is called as isotropic band. Let us see what is happening in them. Now students, if you are going to move these thin filaments, imagine over here, if you are going to move this thin filament over here, or I can take one more chalk and I can explain you. Suppose now this is the yellow chalk and this is the blue chalk. Okay, imagine this blue chalk to be your thick filament. Okay, and this is the yellow chalk. Previously it was like this. And if I make the yellow chalk and blue chalk like this, beta, the area where you only saw the thin filament, was I band, right? If I move this chalk inside this like this and I contract, do you see this portion where you only see the thin filament, this part where you only see the thin filament is shortening, because it is moving inside on either side, which is why during muscle contraction your I band shortens. I have written it over here that the I band or isotropic band shortens during muscle contraction. But since your myosin filament, since your thick filament did not move at all, so your overall thick, because A band was the length of the entire myosin filament, thick filament. Yes or no? The A band was the entire length of the thick filament. So even if you are sliding the thin filaments, the overall thick filament is constant, which is why the length of A band remains same, whereas I band shortens, the sarcomere also shortens. And since beta you move entirely the thin filament, so they appear like this, the thin filament appear like this, will you see any H zone here? Will you see any area which is having only thick part? Answer would be no. So Hansen's zone also disappears when your muscles are contracting completely. H zone is disappearing. On the top I have also written that sarcomere consists of half of I band plus one complete A band plus half of I band. You can see here half of I band plus the entire A band plus half of I band is making your sarcomere. I revised this quickly, although I have described it 2 or 3 times, because I expect that you have already completed this part in the animal tissues, okay. So this is the muscle contraction, not the contraction actually. In this chapter we are given about the sliding filament theory, okay. In the next part we are going to discuss about the structure of the actin and structure of the myosin. Now talking about the structures of the myofilaments, we have got 2 types of myofilament. One is the thin myofilament and other is the thick myofilament. So usually we get confused that thin myofilament only has actin protein and thick myofilament only has myosin protein. It's not like that. When we talk about the thin filaments, it has got 3 components. It has got actin, it has got troponin and it has got tropomyosin. These 3 things together makes your thin myofilament, but when we talk about the thick myofilament, it has got myosin protein. Now talking about these structures one by one, if you look at the structure of actin, this G actin, which is the globular actin, when this globular actin polymerizes, this forms this structure which is called as filamentous actin or F actins. Sometimes they may ask you that 2 ions very important for muscle contraction. Even the magnesium, calcium you know very well, but magnesium ion is also very important, because your G actin is not going to polymerize as F actin if you do not have the magnesium ions. So this G actin converting into the filamentous actin. Alright, that's the first component. Talking about the second component is tropomyosin. This tropomyosin is a fibrous structure, and if I want to make it over here like in your NCERT, I have written 2 filaments runs throughout the length of the F actin. What happens? There are 2 filaments. I am making it with orange color, okay. So there are 2 filaments that runs throughout the length of F actin, which is called as tropomyosin. Now you know that actin is very important, because actin is going to combine with the myosin, and that's how muscle contraction will take place. But in fact your tropomyosin and troponin both are also very important, because troponin, which I will be discussing now, this troponin along with the tropomyosin, listen carefully, this troponin along with this tropomyosin, it blocks the active site on the actin. It blocks the active sites on the actin, and thus it is not going to allow the myosin to combine with actin during rest. Okay. Now talking about this troponin beta, this troponin is a trimeric protein. Do you see this troponin is having 3 components? So this is a trimeric protein having 3 parts I have written. It is having TPT, it is having TPI, it is having TPC. Okay, the TPC part of troponin is the part of troponin that has the ability to bind with calcium ions. The part of the troponin that has the property of combining with tropomyosin. The troponin's part that combines with the tropomyosin is the TPT. And this TPI stands for inhibitory troponin, which means this is the part that is actually going to mask the active sites on the actin. Okay. Now, if I want to make it over here only, I have only this color only. If I want to show this trimeric protein, beta, it is present at regular intervals like this. Okay, and that is how there are three parts which are very, very important. This is also a regulatory protein, because whenever the calcium ion is going to bind on the TPC part, remember, whenever this calcium is going to bind on the TPC part of the troponin, there is a structural change in the troponin, and the entire troponin along with tropomyosin shifts away from the active site of the actin. If this is the actin and this is the troponin tropomyosin, but as soon as the calcium ion is binding on the TPC part of the troponin, this entire structure is shifting away and the active sites on the actin are exposed. So, these are comprising your thin filaments. Talking about the thick myofilament, it is having the myosin, and the monomeric unit of myosin is called as meromyosin. Beta, meromyosin, this structure is given in your NCERT. Meromyosin is a tadpole-like structure, okay? And in this tadpole-like structure, it has got three parts. It has got globular head, this is the head region. It has got short arm and it has got tail. Talking about the head part, which is very, very important, it has two things, it has binding sites for two things. One binding site is definitely for actin. So, this blue one, suppose I have shown the actin binding sites. So, on the head you have got actin binding sites, and also you have got ATP binding sites on the head. Also beta, the myosin itself can hydrolyze, can break down this activity, because the head is also having ATPase activity. Whenever the ATP binds on the ATP binding site, it can hydrolyze the ATP to produce energy. So, head, short arm and tail. Actually, this entire short arm and globular head is also called as cross arm. Also called as cross arm. Meromyosin can be divided as heavy meromyosin and light meromyosin. When you say heavy meromyosin, the overall molecular weight is definitely higher, and that is having the globular head plus this short arm. Okay. When you are saying light meromyosin, it has got the tail part. Got it? Heavy meromyosin with head and short arm, and the light meromyosin with the tail. Remember the head part, because that's very, very important. That is going to be useful during the muscle contraction. Also remember the troponin, because TPC is very, very important, because whenever the calcium is going to bind on TPC, the entire troponin and tropomyosin is going to shift away, and that's how the muscle contraction will start. We are going to take this part in the next class. Today we have only done the structures and some basic things which I expect that you must have already gone through in the animal tissues. We are going to start with the muscle contraction, the sliding filament theory. Now, talking about the very first thing, before you understand about the muscle contraction, you must know there are certain channels, pumps or release channels associated with sarcoplasmic reticulum. So, I have shown this is the muscle where you have the cytoplasm called as sarcoplasm, where you have the plasma membrane. Beta, what was the plasma membrane called? The sarcolemma. And inside you have a storehouse of calcium which is called as sarcoplasmic reticulum. Now, talking about this sarcoplasmic reticulum, beta, this sarcoplasmic reticulum is related with two types of channels. One is called as calcium active pump, another is called as calcium release channels. Okay. Now, very important to understand the functioning of the calcium active pump and the functioning of the calcium release channels. Okay. Talking about the calcium active pump, beta, the calcium active pump is always on. It is always active. You don't need any action potential to activate this calcium active pump. and the function of the calcium active pump is to store all the calcium ion inside the SR. What it is doing, it is pumping in. It is pumping in, it is storing all the calcium from the sarcoplasm, storing it inside the sarcoplasmic reticulum. But exactly opposite is performed by the calcium release channels. What is happening with calcium release channel is that they are active only when there is action potential. Only when the action potential is available, that is when the calcium release channels are open, and once the calcium release channels are open, they are going to send the calcium ion in the sarcoplasm. So, the calcium release channel is very important for the muscle contraction, because you need a large amount of calcium ion inside the sarcoplasm. But the exact opposite was done by beta calcium active pump. Now, once we talked about action potential, when we talked about large amount of calcium ion, we should know how this action potential is coming, how your calcium release channels are actually opening. So, let's discuss about a mechanism which is very must be familiar to all of you. I hope you are familiar with the things called as neuromuscular junction, the synapse and everything. You know there are junctions formed between two neurons called as synapse. The junction formed between a neuron and a muscle is called as neuromuscular junction. Also, I have written one thing which is called as one motor unit. What is this one motor unit? Students, we know that suppose this is a neuron, okay, and this neuron has axon terminals like this. This neuron's axon terminal can form junction with the muscle fibers, right? Now, the neuron, one single neuron having lot of axon terminals, because it is branched, forming junction with the number of muscle fiber. It can form junction with one muscle fiber, with two muscle fiber, with three muscle fiber. Whatever is the number of muscle fiber, along with that one neuron consists of the one motor unit. Got my point? One neuron forming synapse with whatever number of muscle fiber makes the entire motor unit. Now, what happens, how this calcium release channels are releasing all the calcium ion into the sarcoplasm? Let us see that. What happens, I have written in the flowchart form, action potential reaches the axon terminal. The neuron which carrying the information, the axon terminal has received that axon action potential, okay, that has traveled along the axon terminal. As soon as it reaches the axon terminal, the acetylcholine neurotransmitter, acetylcholine is the common neurotransmitter in case of muscles. The acetylcholine neurotransmitter is released in the neuromuscular junction. Once it is released in the neuromuscular junction, what happens next is the binding of this acetylcholine with the receptors present on the sarcolemma. Okay, this binds with the receptor. Now, what I have written is very important is sodium voltage gated channels. Okay, let me ask you one question, because this is acetylcholine, and acetylcholine is released into the neuromuscular junction. They are present in the synaptic vesicles in the axon terminal. Do you know which ions are going to facilitate the fusion of the synaptic vesicles with the membrane, with the presynaptic membrane? Those are the calcium ions. Okay, there the calcium ion is facilitating the fusion of the vesicles with the presynaptic membrane. But here, as soon as your acetylcholine is binding on the muscles, binding on the receptors related with the sarcolemma, what is happening is in the sarcolemma, the sodium voltage gated channels open. Once the sodium voltage gated channels open, the influx of sodium ion is seen, due to which the action potential is generated. Once the action potential is generated, which channels are now going to get the signal is the calcium release channels, and once this calcium release channels get the information, the calcium ions are very much increased in the sarcoplasm, and once the elevated amount of calcium ion is seen in the sarcoplasm, what is happening is the binding of the calcium ion with the TPC. And once I told you that the TPC part of the regulatory protein troponin is combining with the calcium ion, the entire troponin conformational changes are taking place. The troponin along with tropomyosin shifts away from the active site, and the actin's active site is exposed. Also I have written something called as T tubules, beta. What are the T tubules? T tubules are actually the folds of the sarcolemma. The sarcolemma is fold, and the folds are called as, if I want to make the sarcolemma like this, the sarcolemma are fold like this. This folding of the sarcolemma is called as T tubules, and this T tubule is actually helping in spreading of the action potential. So that's how, beta, we only discussed how your action potential is generated, how the calcium ion is available, how your active site is exposed. Now we are going to actually do the entire sliding filament theory that is given in your NCERT. Students, let's see how the sliding filament theory is explained in your NCERT and how the muscle contraction is actually taking place. So we have discussed till now that whenever calcium ion is available, it is binding with the TPC and the actin's active site is exposed as the troponin and tropomyosin is shifting away from the active sites of actin whenever this calcium is binding with the TPC. Now whenever, beta, all the active site of actin is exposed, now we can start with the muscle contraction. So this is the explanation of the sliding filament theory, exactly like given in your NCERT. Talking about these white balls, these are nothing but the filamentous actin, and this yellow part I have shown just one head, this one head of myosin. In the very first point I have written that when ATP is available, it binds on the head of the myosin. We now know very well that the head of the myosin can bind with the ATP. It can also bind with the actin, right? So it has two binding sites. So whenever the ATP is available, what is happening in the very first diagram is ATP is binding on the head. Do you see? With the blue color I have shown, ATP is binding on the head. But do you see the formation of cross bridge? Is the cross bridge formed? Is both the actin and myosin interacting? Answer is no. So the very first thing, very important point to notice here is that ATP binding on the head never causes the formation of cross bridge. Do you understand? ATP binding on the head never causes the formation of cross bridge. Clear? Now students, whenever the ATP is binding on the head, we also discussed that the myosin's head is also having ATPase activity. When I say ATPase activity, whenever the ATP is binding on the head of the myosin, what is happening is ATP cleaved, and ATP is broken down into ADP plus inorganic phosphate. ADP plus inorganic phosphate. So do you see in the next step, in that point I have written that ATP head has ATPase activity, ATP is hydrolyzed into ADP and PI. Now in this next step, do you see, this is actin, white one, this is the myosin head. Do you see that ADP and PI is now bound on the head, but in this step also I have not shown the formation of cross bridge. Okay, but as soon as your ATP is hydrolyzed as ADP and inorganic phosphate, you know that you have broken the high energy phosphate bond, and once you break high energy phosphate bond, you have got now a lot of energy which is going to help in the formation of cross bridge. Correct? So here I have written as ADP is bound on head and head is energized. It is going to bind on the head and it is going to provide the head with energy. In the next step, you will see the cross bridge formation and you will see all those events that we have already discussed, that the Z line is shortening, the thin filaments are moving towards the H zone and like that. Now talking about this, as soon as the energy is available with the head beta, what is happening? See? Do you see cross bridge formation? So with the help of this broken down product of the ATP, which is ADP and PI, you have got the energy to form the cross bridge. Clear? What I have written in the diagram is power stroke. Now what is this power stroke? Imagine this to be the myosin filament which is going to combine with the actin filament, right? And you know very well that these Z lines are attached with the, suppose my hand is thin filament, okay, which is actin. Now, here also you have got head of the myosin like this, beta, and here also you have got head of the myosin like this. Alright, I have shown the head. Now, as soon as the cross bridge is formed, what is happening? The pulling of the actin filaments. There is a pulling of the actin filaments towards the center. So whenever this cross bridge is formed, this thin filament is there, and then there is myosin on both the sides. What is happening? The thin filaments are pulled inside. When the thin filaments are pulled inside, that means your muscles are now contracted. And your muscles are contracted. After that, what is happening? This ADP and PI, which was bound on the head, is now removed. It is now going to come out. But even after that ADP and PI is coming out, do you see that the cross bridge is still formed? Cross bridge is still formed even after removal of the ADP and PI. It is going to break whenever the next ATP is available. Getting my point? Actually, ATP is not responsible for formation of cross bridge. Actually, this cross bridge is going to break down when the next ATP is available, and that's how the cycle will continue. Okay, again binding on the other active sites of actin will continue. But remember, power stroke means pulling of the actin filaments towards the A band and the contraction of the muscles, and this cross bridge will be broken only when the ATP is available. You can relate it with a condition very commonly called as rigor mortis. Have you heard of something called as rigor mortis? This is the condition beta after death. After death, what is happening is the body becomes stiff. Like we usually close the eyes and everything. Why? Because after death, our body remains in the contracted state. And why it remains in the contracted state for some time? Because after death of the person, no ATP is available. When no ATP is available, you have nothing to break the cross bridge. And that contracted state of the body after death is called as rigor mortis. So that's the sliding filament theory described in your NCERT. Now students, after muscle contraction, you need to relax back the muscles. Now when you talk about the relaxation of muscles, what is happening? We knew that there is one channel which is quite important if you want to contract the muscles. Those were the calcium release channels. So calcium release channels will be open only when there is action potential. Once your muscles are not receiving any impulse, once your muscles are not receiving any input, there is no action potential. Once there is no action potential, what is happening? I have written in flow chart manner that as action potential is not available, the calcium release channels are closed. And the only channels that will be open at that time is the calcium active pump. And we know that once the calcium active pump is on, the calcium active pump is going to store the calcium ion inside the sarcoplasmic reticulum. It is not going to allow the calcium ion to come out of the SR and show the muscle contraction. Also students, you can remember that inside the sarcoplasmic reticulum, there is a protein which is called as calsequesterin. Calsequesterin is a protein that is present inside the sarcoplasmic reticulum that binds with the calcium ion, and it does not allow the calcium ion to be released outside the sarcoplasm. That's how your muscles are contracting. Also, you can remember one more protein beta that is present instead of troponin. Troponin, we said, is a calcium binding protein in the skeletal muscles, but in case of smooth muscles, there is a protein which is called as calmodulin. This calmodulin protein present in the smooth muscles is actually binding with the calcium ions, unlike the troponin case of skeletal muscles. These are two informations you can remember. Now students, there is one cycle which I have mentioned. This is not given in NCERT, so not that important. I will only tell you the part which you need to remember for NEET, okay? So I have made the entire cycle. I will tell you which part is more important. Now what is this Cori cycle? I have written that there is a shuffling of the lactate to liver and glucose to muscle. So there is a continuous formation of lactate, then glucose, glycogen. This shuffling taking place between liver and your muscles, this entirely forms your Cori cycle. Now what happens once you are contracting the muscles, there would be a time that your continuous contraction of muscles will now lead to the anaerobic respiration, the breakdown of glycogen anaerobically. And you know that whenever the anaerobic breakdown of glycogen is taking place, the formation of lactic acid is seen. Even around the eyeball muscles, I am going to discuss in the last part of the muscles about the two types of muscle fiber, red muscle fiber and white muscle fiber. You will see that the accumulation of lactic acid is seen more in one type of muscle fiber. Now, not talking about that part, talking about the Cori cycle, let us see how the lactic acid is accumulated anaerobically. Now students, remember there are two parts only, okay. First thing that you will remember, that Cori cycle runs between what and what. So it runs in the liver and it runs in the muscles. Blood is a part, no doubt, but two very important parts of the Cori cycle where it runs is number one muscle and number two liver. Now let's see how it is happening. Talking about the very first thing that I have written on the board is you have the stored glycogen, which is the form of glucose, only glucose is stored as glycogen. So you have glycogen which is stored in your muscles, okay, number one. Now what is happening? You are contracting the muscles too much. Now what you are doing? You are anaerobically breaking down this glycogen. What happens if you anaerobically break down this glycogen? This glycogen is converting into lactic acid. But this glycogen is present where, beta? It was present in the muscle. So definitely this lactic acid will be present in the muscle only. Now why do we say that at a time, at a stretch only, don't do too much of exercise? Because the anaerobic breakdown will take place. And once a lot of lactic acid is accumulated, that region starts paining. But slowly as we move our muscles, what is happening? That lactic acid accumulated in that particular region of the muscle is now going to move. Okay, that is now going to move from that particular part, that is going to come in the blood. So muscles glycogen, then muscles have lactic acid, which is as a result of anaerobic respiration. Then your blood is having lactic acid. From the blood, the lactic acid is moving in the liver. Okay, remember, that is why liver and muscle. Now this beta, the conversion of lactic acid is important, that this lactic acid which has now come in liver has two fates. One fate is the 20%, 1/5 conversion can be into CO2 and O2. 1/5 or 20% of this lactic acid in liver gets converted into CO2 and water, whereas 80% is again converted into glycogen. Okay, 80% is converted into glycogen. Now again this glycogen, which is composed of glucose, is going to break down, and in the blood again you can see glucose. From the blood, the glucose may go to the muscles, which may use that glucose immediately, or it may store that glucose in the form of glycogen. So that's the entire Cori cycle that runs between your liver and your muscles. But if you don't remember the entire cycle, at least remember the parts and at least remember the conversion of this lactic acid, 20% into CO2 and water and 80% into the glycogen. Next we are going to discuss about the comparison which is given in your NCERT, red muscle fiber and white muscle fiber. Students, let's discuss about the two types of muscle fibers which is given in your NCERT. One is your red muscle fiber and the other one is your white muscle fiber. Okay, now let's see what are the differences between these two types of muscle fiber. Obviously, if I am saying red muscle fiber, that means it is having more red color and it is having white color. Now, why this coloration is because of presence of myoglobin. Red muscle fiber has more myoglobin, and this myoglobin can bind with the oxygen and it can give oxygen when required. Okay, so this myoglobin, just like hemoglobin if you remember, and this myoglobin is present in abundance in the red muscle fiber and it is present in less amount in the white muscle fiber, which is why the red muscle fiber is red in color whereas the white muscle fiber is white in color. Now talking about the next point, the red muscle fiber have got more number of mitochondria. Now, if they have got more number of mitochondria and they have got less number of mitochondria, so obviously the white muscle fiber will be dependent on the anaerobic respiration, and they usually show aerobic respiration. In fact, the red muscle fibers are sometimes also referred as aerobic muscle fibers, and the white muscle fibers are referred to as anaerobic muscle fibers. Alright, so they had more myoglobin, they also have more mitochondria. They are having smaller diameter. Now that's the information you can remember, that red muscle fiber has a smaller diameter, whereas white muscle fiber have a larger diameter. Talking about a point which is important to understand the next point. I have written that your red muscle fiber is having less sarcoplasmic reticulum. Remember beta, red muscle fiber smaller diameter with more mitochondria, with more myoglobin, but what is less in them is sarcoplasmic reticulum. Now sarcoplasmic reticulum, we have already discussed, is a storehouse of calcium. If it is a storehouse of calcium, it is storing calcium ions, right? Now, it can store calcium ion, and calcium ions are required for muscle contraction. The one with more calcium ion will show faster contraction. The one with less calcium ion will show less contraction. Remember in that way. If I am saying that your red muscle fiber have less sarcoplasmic reticulum, means the calcium ions are also less. If I am saying your white muscle fiber has more sarcoplasmic reticulum, means calcium ion is more. The one with less SR, less calcium ion, shows slow contractions, whereas if the contractions are slower, it would be for a longer duration. Contractions are slower but for a longer duration. Here the contractions are faster but for a shorter duration. Got it? So, slower contraction for a longer duration, faster contraction for a lesser duration. Now, talking about the examples. You all must have seen kite, okay, kite, not the one that we play with. Kite is the bird, okay, and you see kite can fly for a very longer time without doing this, right? Why? Because their flight muscles are made up of the red muscle fiber. Also, we have got some muscles in our back that is called as extensor muscles. They are also made up of red, they are also having, that is also red muscle fiber. Talking about the examples of white muscle fiber, eyeball muscles. The eyeball muscles are having the white muscle fiber, and the flight muscles of sparrow is also having white muscle fiber. Remember beta, they will never give you the differences straight away. Okay, they will give you like eyeball muscles have more sarcoplasmic reticulum or less sarcoplasmic reticulum. So, you need to understand that your eyeball muscles are an example of white muscle fiber. Okay, if you know that eyeball muscle is a white muscle fiber, then only you can know all the points related with that. So, usually these only examples are mentioned. So, you can remember these examples only, nothing is going to be asked from outside. Okay, also you can relate these eyeball muscles. You know, there is a very interesting thing that sometimes, because they are white muscle fibers, because the eyeball muscles are white muscle fiber, anaerobic respiration is taking place, and we have seen that anaerobic respiration produces lactic acid, and lactic acid will cause pain. So, whenever there is accumulation of lactic acid because of anaerobic respiration, what you can do, you can move that lactic acid from the eyeball muscles to the blood. Okay, how you can send it? Suppose by using pen opposite side. Okay, don't do it with the nib. You can simply do this, and while simply doing this, now what you do, all the lactic acid you can shift, and you can remove the pain. That's something which I also do anyway. So that's a comparison of both the types of muscle fiber. So today we have discussed only the muscles part beta. Okay, the muscle part is completed, and we are still left with the bones part, or the bone, the entire endoskeleton system we are going to discuss in the next class. Till then, read everything from NCERT, because this chapter purely asks questions from NCERT. Okay, so pay attention to the NCERT. Also, since some part is already described in the structural organization in animals, the differences between the different types of muscles, so I would want you to please go through that part also. Read it from the NCERT. Stay happy, stay well, take care.